My name is Melissa. The other day, my daughter Kelly said to me, "Mom, why does your voice get so high when you're on the phone?" And just like that, at 47, I felt embarrassed as a housewife. You see, my mother used to do the same thing, and I often mimicked her. But to think that I was doing it too, it's a bit embarrassing to be observed so closely. She wasn't such a sassy kid before. I wonder who she takes after. Makes me want to meet the parents. Just kidding. Today's story is about her, before she was even born. I really want you to hear it. It was over a decade ago. I was just past 30. After marrying my husband, our life had finally settled down, so I took a part-time job at a nearby market, but it turned out to be a bad move. To be precise, it wasn't so much the workplace, but rather the store manager, Smith, who was incompetent, making the work environment unbearable. Smith was what you'd call green, only his second year on the job. You're thinking, a store manager in his second year? No way, right? That's what I thought too until I started working there. Apparently, in large companies, it's a common training method to put young employees in charge as managers. I heard that in some stores, people became managers just after 6 months on the job. This seems to be a tactic used by companies leaning towards the black side, thinking, if we make them managers, we can cut overtime costs or due to staff shortages. It sounds good to say that they're giving young people a chance, but in reality, it's more like a desperate measure. Not just the store managers, but night managers and other fancy titles are often created to cut overtime costs. As they climb the ladder to positions like area manager, the stress increases exponentially, leading to a high turnover rate. To fill these gaps, they prematurely promote younger employees to manager positions and so on, creating a vicious cycle. The situation is quite grim. However, the duration varies from person to person. Some have work experience from other stores and have undergone manager training. So even among the younger staff, there are truly capable individuals who come along. Whether us part-time employees and staff members get a good manager is entirely up to chance. Until Smith, my colleagues and I had been fortunate with good managers. But I must say it again, Smith was incompetent. In other words, he was a total miss. From the very day Smith transferred to our store, he made his presence known. Of course, I mean that in the worst possible way. First day on the job, he didn't take any notes on the handover information from the previous manager. If he could remember everything without notes, that would be fine. I didn't say anything either. Moreover, Smith would casually respond to the former manager's instructions with remarks like, there really are customers like that, huh? Or, I can tell that kind of stuff by instinct. At that moment, my colleagues and I, watching from the sidelines, wondered if he was really cut out for this. But after all, he was a younger boss than me. I admit I was critical of him from the start. But you know how it is, that initial distrust, like in stories where the one who seemed incompetent turns out to be incredibly capable. Isn't that a classic plot in those TV programs about young employees struggling and everyone tearing up at the new manager's efforts in the end? So we thought, well, it's only the first day, and it's not fair to judge him by his appearance or vibe. The next day, Smith was suddenly 30 minutes late because he overslept, and to top it off, he had completely forgotten all the tasks taught by the former manager. We were astounded by his level of ineptitude, which was both expected and beyond expectation. Since the previous manager had already transferred elsewhere, the assistant manager, Williams, had to teach Smith the job. But Smith, who nodded lightly without taking any notes, made everyone think that he would ask the same things again tomorrow. True to our predictions, Smith never really learned his job. Or rather, he didn't try to. How do I know he didn't try? Well, when you see someone at work, you can tell when they lack motivation, right? It's like an instinct. Indeed, within a week of transferring, Smith claimed, "I hurt my back while stocking shelves and I can't move at all," and took 3 days off. At first, everyone thought it was bad luck for him to have an accident so soon after transferring, but on the second day of his absence during lunch break, a staff member from the meat section said, "That guy was at the slot parlor I frequent. There are a bunch of cigarette butts piled up, so he must have been there for a long time." By the way, that day was a holiday, and it was extremely busy. Because of that, some people had given up their day off to cover the absent manager. It goes without saying that everyone was on the verge of exploding with frustration, veins popping on their temples and foreheads. After the break, Smith returned, waving with a smile. "Really sorry for taking time off," he said, running lightly into the store. Everyone was thinking, "What happened to your back, Manager Smith?" and wanted to trip him up, but we just stomped our feet and tapped our fingers in frustration. Smith's behavior continued to be astonishing in a bad way. First, he was hopeless with women. Our workplace didn't have the kind of cute girls that Smith liked. We had people who would stomp on bugs with a straight face and slam their desks, laughing heartily. A group of tough, wild characters. Smith, who likes teddy bear-loving girls, casually showed no interest in our part-time employees and staff, who were like real bears even a hunter would flee from. So Smith turned his attention to the customers. Wandering around the store, pretending to stock shelves or check items, he would approach high school and college girls at the speed of light. Then it was chat time for 20 to 30 minutes. Even if the cash registers were short-staffed, right in front of him, he didn't care and just enjoyed his time with the girls. Williams yelled at him in the back, but it was useless. Smith would just laugh mockingly, saying, "Sorry," and then go off to find another girl. It was hopeless. At least if the customers were happy, it could be barely called customer service. But the girls he talked to all looked annoyed and inconvenienced. It's not an exaggeration to say that Smith's mere presence was bringing down the reputation of our supermarket. He was like a walking complaint. While we were angry, we had to pull Smith away from the girls. We wanted to scold him, but unfortunately in the work schedule, Smith was counted as one human being. One. Even though his actual contribution was 0. Because of this, we were always short-staffed and had to make customers wait. If there was time to scold Smith, we should have prioritized the customers in front of us. This was Williams' decision, so we focused on our immediate tasks, but everyone, including Williams, was accumulating stress from not being able to express what they wanted to say. Smith's problems weren't just about taking notes or chatting up girls. He also judged employees by their looks. Of course, with mostly robust employees like ours, everyone was pretty much the same. However, among them, perhaps because he saw them every day, Smith gradually created a hierarchy in his mind like, "She's on the cuter side" or "She's older." A woman in her 40s who was single was his favorite, and I, a married woman in my 30s at the time, was treated lightly, receiving orders without a subject like, "Do that for me." This infuriated the male employees the most, who couldn't hope to be Smith's favorites. They were burdened with all sorts of troublesome tasks, but Smith would forget he even assigned them. One person was told, "I want to check the herb sautéed salmon before it's stocked, so don't put it in the ice corner, leave it up front." Following the manager's orders, that person did as instructed, but Smith had forgotten he even gave the order, and the salmon ended up melting. It wasn't spoiled, but refreezing could affect the taste and aroma. It was a no-go for sale according to the manual. The store suffered a significant loss thanks to Smith. Isn't it a manager's primary job to increase sales? There were other issues too, like when a young part-time employee girl coughed a bit, he sent her home early to avoid worsening her cold, while people not in his favorites had to do overtime and work on holidays. Of course, the employees didn't stay silent, and those who were wronged would shout, "Get your act together!" But it had no effect. Smith would defiantly respond, "I'm the manager, right? You think I'm going to listen to you low-level employees? If you have complaints, either quit or try to outrank me." Gradually, Smith started leaving work early. His destinations varied, like horse races, slot parlors, or cafes with women he liked. If he only had kept it hidden, but he blatantly boasted about it, killing our motivation. Many young single men actually quit the job because of this. But for those of us with children or taking care of elderly parents, finding another job wasn't easy. Despite our grievances, we had no choice but to cling to this supermarket. We supported each other's busy schedules and shortcomings, trying to work hard even with fewer people, as if Smith wasn't there from the start. Then, out of the blue, Smith called me to the back. That day was a 5 times point day, and the cash registers were bustling. Why call me now? He really can't read the room, I thought angrily as I went to see Smith. And he said something unbelievable. Lately, there have been a lot of letters to the customer consultation desk. Guess what they're about? Maybe complaints about long waits at the registers or being treated roughly when approached or employees talking too much. By the way, the long waits at the registers were because Smith was chatting and we were short-staffed, and despite speeding up, there were too many customers. The complaints about rough treatment and too much employee chatter were all directed at Smith. The possible customer complaints I just listed were practically an introduction to Smith. If there was a Wikipedia page about Smith, this could be copied and pasted directly. But Smith just smirked condescendingly at my words and nodded knowingly. Doesn't he realize it's about him? This failure of a manager? You really understand, don't you? Huh? Smith clapped his hands loudly and rejoiced, leaving me dumbfounded. Did I really understand Smith that well? I didn't like the sound of that, but I doubted this man could see himself objectively. Did he even understand himself? Turns out you're aware after all. Saves me the trouble of explaining. All the customer complaints are about you. What? I've seen it. While I was serving customers, you were talking at the register, always looking busy but actually just scowling. That looks rough. Talking to customers at the register was about your complaints, and having a stern face is just my natural expression, you know. Before I could retort, Smith continued with his theory. I thought there was too much idle chatter among the employees, just chatting while stocking shelves. You all huddle up in the aisles. That's no good. It's something incompetent people do. But that's because we were discussing who would cover for your absence and who would help where. It was frustrating. I was about to say, with all due respect, when he dropped the bombshell. With complaints like this continuing, William isn't useful either. A reform is needed. You're a nuisance, so leave. You're fired. Being fired so abruptly, I was honestly surprised. Fired? Really? Understood, I replied, and immediately went to gather my things from the locker and left the store quickly. It was that evening I received a call from my close colleague, Carol. Melissa, is it true you left? The manager is bragging about it. Yeah, it's true, I left. If you're not here, we can't manage the work. Well, I feel sorry for everyone and frustrated myself, but I was fired. If the store can't function without me, then that's that. That's true. Carol's voice on the phone conveyed her dilemma of whether she should quit too. Hey, Carol, I have a suggestion. Huh? 5 days after that phone call, for the first time since announcing my resignation, I went to the supermarket before it opened. Carol was with me. Spotting us approaching, that man yelled, "You two, what did you do?" Hearing Smith's roar, Carol and I smirked. What's wrong? Looks tough. No way, Melissa, you know what you did. Got caught? As Carol and I played along, Smith shouted again, "Don't mess with me, what's going on? You must have done something. Why am I receiving a dismissal order? It's absurd to fire a manager for not contributing to employee development." The fact is the fact. Responding seriously to Smith's loud complaints, Carol and I said, "Not a single person here thinks you've nurtured them. If I have to thank someone, it would be Williams. But wait, you fired Williams too, right? Incompetent people are not needed." Oh? What have you accomplished? Williams interrupted Smith without missing a beat. Behind him stood many employees and former employees. I learned from Carol's call that after I was fired, Williams was also dismissed for the same reason as me. The reason was lack of proper supervision of employees. Williams and I, despite being busy, had cooperated to keep the store running. I was a part-time employee, but I believed I had earned the employees' trust. Hearing that both of us had left all at once, the employees apparently felt despair. They wondered, what should we do now? When I heard this from Carol, I thought everyone was worried about what to do. We should think about it together. So I took action. I reached out to colleagues and former colleagues and sent a petition to the store's headquarters by express delivery. The petition said, "Recently, our store has been facing a continuous loss of staff and sales are declining. The root cause is the transfer of the new manager." Well, actually, I listed more detailed grievances and issues that the headquarters couldn't notice just by looking at the sales figures. Occasionally, there were incidents like the salmon herb sauté that caused losses. But generally, we all worked hard to avoid causing damage to the workplace. So even by looking at the numbers, our store seemed to be in the usual business cycle of good and bad times. The store wasn't continuously in the red. There are many other stores with a high turnover rate. Since Smith worked decently when the area manager visited, individual complaints of employees leaving were seen as just grudges at the end of a sour human relationship. For these reasons, the headquarters had no idea about the poor environment of our store, hence the petition. A petition from just 1 or 2 people might have been ignored by the headquarters, but the revelations and signatures of over 70 past and current employees, including those who had resigned, had a significant impact. The headquarters, which usually moves quickly in such situations, decided to dismiss Smith almost as if to sweep it under the rug. Along with that, former employees who wished to return to the store were allowed to do so. Short-staffed as they were, the headquarters would prefer a large group of employees over just Smith. Former employees already familiar with the operations were especially welcome to return. Moreover, Williams had secretly brought surveillance camera footage showing Smith persistently bothering customers, which we presented as evidence to the headquarters. We also sent footage showing how Williams and I were unjustly forced to leave. After former employees' accusations and seeing Smith on the surveillance camera harassing multiple women, the headquarters' view was, we can't tell which employee the customer complaints are specifically about as names aren't written, but Smith's behavior as an employee is very regrettable. That was the moment Smith's incompetence was exposed. One former employee's sister had recently been one of the girls bothered by Smith in the store. This girl also submitted a complaint to the headquarters saying she found Smith annoying and wanted to support her sister. Every time he kept saying I was cute and followed me around the store. He persistently asked about my love life and if I'd consider someone like him. I would never have gone there if it wasn't for my sister's store, she said. These various misdeeds were now tightening the noose around Smith's neck, but Smith was still raging. Facing Williams, he shouted, "Don't act all high and mighty. You can't do anything. I'll make them revoke this firing," spittle flying as he yelled. At that moment, Williams showed a nasty smile. "Right, I'm just a former assistant manager. I can't do anything anymore. That's why Melissa asked someone more impressive for help. Right, Melissa?" Williams turned to me, and I smiled just as nastily. "Yep, I doubt even the manager could speak arrogantly to this person. Right, Anne?" A woman quietly walked out from among the employees. Seeing her, Smith exclaimed, "Huh? A job that involves talking to women all day must have been very enjoyable for you, right?" she said. Anne!" Smith stammered. It turned out that the woman was Smith's wife. Smith's wife wasn't the store president, but a relative on the president's maternal side. Anne herself wasn't someone with immense power to wield. She was just a typical housewife. But since her brother, who was hired through connections, was at the core of the headquarters operations, she apparently heard about the headquarters decision early. From her brother. "I want to hear the story," she said, and I was called through Williams to explain what happened. As a result, Anne became furious. "My husband, who always says he's too busy to pay attention to me." Her anger surprised us even more than a hunter would. I mean, it was really scary. When she slammed the desk, a cup probably lifted about 1.18 inches off of it. "I've been wanting a child, but he ignores me, yet he has time to play with other women?" "No, it's not like that. I mean, there was no ulterior motive. It's all lies. Fake, fake, fake." "Oh, really? But the surveillance camera showed you following girls around and talking to them. They were customers, right?" "Surveillance camera? No, that's fabricated. Fake, fake, fake." "Enough with the poor lies." "Well, I guess it's true. You did approach me in the store, too. That's just the kind of man you are, huh?" While pointing at Smith and looking mischievously in our direction, "He's just hopeless, isn't he?" And smiled as if to say just that. Seeing her refreshingly straightforward attitude, we couldn't help but smile, too. "You can't work. Don't cherish me. There's no future with you, especially now that you're fired. What can you do now?" "No, I'll do anything from now on," shouted Smith. "Wait, from now on? Are you admitting that until now you did nothing? Came to work just to give orders and did nothing yourself? I quickly pointed this out and everyone started laughing. What do you want from me? What's your aim? Smith yelled. Perhaps it's the downfall of Manager Smith's life, I answered seriously. That's impossible. That will never happen, Smith shouted back. Then Anne remarked, Oh, but look, you're already on thin ice, aren't you? Huh? Smith gasped. You're unemployed now, right? You've always been incompetent, unpopular with girls. If I file for divorce, that might be your downfall. I like that idea. I quickly agreed. Then let's go with that. Anne smiled. What? No, wait, seriously, what do you mean? Are you divorcing me? Smith pushed past me and clung to Anne. Well, it depends on you. First, you should apologize to the customers and employees. They've been living in uncertainty because of you, deciding whether to quit or stay. You've caused so much stress to people whose lives depend on this job. It's all your fault. Smith fell silent under Anne's onslaught of logical arguments. Are you apologizing from your heart? We can't hear you, Manager Smith. Shall we use the store's announcement system so everyone can hear it loud and clear? Oh, that's a good idea. If you do that, I might reconsider the divorce. What? Anne went along with my suggestion, and Smith panicked. But the women's uproar wouldn't stop. It was like the festival was just beginning, and they joyfully dragged Smith to the store's announcement microphone. Needless to say, Smith stood there, teary-eyed and trembling, as the two women cheerfully handed him the microphone. Smith looked like a herbivore thrown into the savannah. In the end, he was overpowered by the insistence of the two women and apologized over the store's intercom. Since Anne was pressing for a divorce, Smith was desperate. However, knowing that the apology was insincere, Williams suggested that Smith sing Time of Your Life as a farewell song. Since you're graduating from the store, you should sing a graduation song, was the reasoning. Smith's singing was so off-key that everyone in the vicinity burst into laughter and recorded it on their mobile phones. Helpless Smith had no choice but to keep singing Time of Your Life over and over for about 20 minutes until the store opened. By the end, everyone had lost interest and stopped listening, which must have been the hardest part for him. Smith, who had continually insulted others, ended up being insulted by everyone, a fitting end. After that, Smith left the company and was divorced by Anne. Even after singing Time of Your Life, he ended up graduating from his marriage as well. He better reflect on his actions. I heard that he changed jobs several times but never stayed long anywhere, constantly hopping from one job to another. Now, more than 10 years later, there are rumors like, I saw him collecting cans in rags. He might even be living in a park. Who would have thought he graduated from having a roof over his head, too? Meanwhile, some employees who had quit because of the manager's tyranny returned to the supermarket, myself included. Now, with a former assistant manager as the new manager, Carol, and the new part-time employees were working happily. Thanks to Williams, the manager, even our wages have gone up, which is really great. Good managers are truly valuable. With Kelly, now a cheeky 15-year-old in the throes of adolescence, it's a time when every penny counts, so I'm very grateful. My husband, who used to be away on short-term assignments or business trips, has settled down with promotions over the years, allowing us to spend more time together as a family. We're planning to go on an overseas trip once Kelly's exams are over and the infectious disease situation settles.